Welcome to the second episode of Retoro Review, where myself and Retoro will take a look at games and review them. If you are new here, let me explain. I use two rating systems to evaluate the worth of the game. The first being on the objective tiers, which are based on if the game is worth what it gives you, if there's style and substance, if the game can keep you engaged, and if the game offers great replayability. I'll also objectively evaluate level and puzzle design, objective fairness of enemies and other player encounters, and the intuitiveness of controls. X tier is reserved for the best of all categories, while F tier is reserved for the worst. The second rating system is my personal and subjective standpoint of the game, and will be based on if the game captures my attention, if it exceeds my expectations, and if it's something I would play again or recommend personally. And on the graph here, the worst games are considered offensive, while the best games are considered addictively fun. I try to condense these videos down to about 20 or 30 minutes, sometimes, so if you've got the time to spare, this is the series for you. At the end, the game gets placed upon the graph depending on how it lines up with both evaluations. If you're still confused, stick around, you'll catch up. And today, I have surprisingly a contentious one, Animal Crossing New Horizons. Oh boy, I've been waiting to review this one. I actually wanted Animal Crossing to be my first jump into this whole new review series thing, but I decided Tears of the Kingdom was a better starting point to get my feet dipped in the water. I looked at some comments, got a little feedback, had a couple discussions, and even had some of my friends watch it to see if they understood anything I was talking about. I've played Animal Crossing New Horizons since the week it released, and though I haven't gone to great lengths to collect everything or see every piece of furniture or 100% my museum, I believe I have more than enough experience to relay how I feel about this game. And luckily, some of you will be pleased to know, Animal Crossing's story is nowhere near as convoluted and timey-wimey as the likes of Tears of the Kingdom. And then again, some of you might not have even expected Animal Crossing to have much of a story at all, and you're on the right track. Animal Crossing New Horizons is Tom Nook's next expedition for making money. The son of a bitch heard the 3DS servers were shutting down soon and decided to make a fast break for the Switch. Essentially, Tom Nook has designed an island getaway sweepstakes package, and your player character, along with two other randomly selected villagers, and Timmy and Tommy Nook, decide to choose an island to move to start a fresh and exciting town. The game randomly selects 4 possible generations, which is quite unfortunate if you care a lot about the layout, but in the grand scheme of things doesn't matter in the endgame. More on that in a bit. I will say, and you'll notice this while playing, the islands are genuinely almost twice as large as the towns were in New Leaf, which is a huge plus. You land there thanks to the brand new Dodo airline service, and quickly set up your own and your fellow islanders' tents. The first few days consist of nothing special. You name the island via unanimous decision in your favor, and collect materials to make decorations and build your respective houses. It sounds exciting and all, but really, these are the game's introduction to your daily chores. At first, there's not a whole lot you can do. Really, you're either selling these items for money, or putting them to use for building things like basic tools and decorations. Very Minecrafty feeling at the beginning, simple but effective. You do feel like, though it's a small start, you're making great progress. When you run out of fallen tree branches to pick up, you can then start weeding the ground to make your place nicer and give you more space to walk around. You're given your Nook phone, which has all the in-game apps you need for island navigation, clothing customization, insect and fish identification, a camera, and so on and so forth. From there, the story kind of dissolves. You're basically crowned the head honcho who is now responsible for everything on the island. You're responsible for furnishing the first 3 new residents' houses. You're responsible for setting plots of land down for new residents. You're responsible for upgrading your resident services building, as well as all the shops that can be built on your and other islands. This game stakes the elements of playing God and brings them down to a softcore, something easy to understand and cozy to play. Technically, the quote-unquote story officially ends when you're able to terraform your island, and let me explain that. After upgrading your resident services building, which is effectively the town hall, Isabelle, the face of the Animal Crossing franchise and long-standing secretary, moves to the island and helps assist Tom Nook with making sure residential duties are tended to. At this point in the game, Tom Nook is solely responsible for giving you kits to set up new plots of land, expanding your home's storage, and editing or moving resident houses, stores, and bridges and inclines. Isabelle, on the other hand, handles things like deciding if your residents should operate based on your sleep schedule by enacting ordinances, confronting villagers to change their catchphrases or clothes if you want them changed, customize your island's flag and jingle, which plays every time you interact with any character or open a door, and, most importantly, evaluates the cleanliness and aesthetics of your island. No, what she actually does is scan the island for how many weeds, trees, bushes, and flowers there are, and vaguely directs you to either develop your green thumb or go outside and commit war crimes against the Lorax. She'll also scan to see how many items are intentionally placed and how many items have simply been dropped, which are deemed as trash. There is a sweet spot for the right amount of greenery and decorations, of which there is a relatively straightforward chart you can find online to optimize this a little bit. Now, why does this matter, you may find yourself asking? If it's my island, I want to be able to do whatever the hell I want. Well, you see, your island has attracted the eye of Animal Crossing's most famous celebrity, KK Slider, a worldwide sensational musician who apparently has studied and mastered every genre of music imaginable. Tom Nook and Isabelle really want KK to come to the island to bring in more islanders and more attraction to the island as a whole. In order to get him there, your island's evaluation grading needs to be at least 3 out of 5 stars. Once you hit that sweet spot, Isabelle and Tom Nook will get a phone call from KK, and he will come by the island and serenade you on a job well done, featuring the game's credits and more or less signaling the end of the quote-unquote story. After this, Tom Nook calls you down to the office, where he informs you about some new things added to the Nook terminal, and adds an application to your phone that can get you started on your terraforming. And when you buy all the pieces, you can lay down paths, break down and build up cliff sides and manage elevation, as well as edit, delete, and create rivers, ponds, and lakes to your heart's content. That is officially where the main storyline ends. There is a DLC story, but that more or less involves the same premise. Tom Nook and happy home designer associate Lottie are found conversing in the airport, and she basically invites you to decorate homes for her, of which she will pay you for your services. You'll end up meeting the cast, including Lottie, Wardell, and Nico, and they'll basically ease you into using new techniques for interior and exterior design. This is also your way to unlock more items for you to use back home for your own personal decorations. After you decorate enough homes, you'll decorate one of the main island's stores, a school, and a hospital. Lather, rinse, repeat until they finally bring up hosting a party with KK as the main act. Do that about 80 times and KK will show up and the DLC campaign is over as well. Regarding the plot and story, well, it's pretty difficult to rank the whole package. The main story is basically a tutorialized way of getting you to understand the controls and the sheer amount of freedom you have with item placement and decorating. Sure, you do eventually upgrade some areas to make them more accessible to you, and some shops to give them more space, and sure, the characters responsible for those upgrades are thankful to you and will offer you more services, but in all honesty, those don't really contribute much to the overall story. Hell, in the DLC, you don't even have a budget to worry about, nor do you really have to make the homes look good. You can legitimately speedrun making money by laying down the bare essentials and calling it a day, and the clients will be more than happy, and you'll get paid for it. I really wish they had some way of evaluating things like that, but I digress. That said, the story doesn't need to be full of dense lore in order to be good. In fact, the Able sisters, once you break Sable out of her shell, will open up about their family, the passing of their mother, and their world-traveling third sister, LaBelle's adoption into the family. And you can learn of Blather's reluctance and sometimes outright hatred of insects, and on the other side, adoration of fossils, as well as his loose association with Brewster, who mans the cafe upstairs. But unfortunately, folks, this is the furthest extent of any meaningful lore or other information. From the aspect of the story, I think it's engaging enough for the first few months of mild play. Sometimes things can get a little tedious with progression, but understand this game was meant to be played and not beaten, which is a different kind of game altogether from, say, Tears of the Kingdom. You gotta keep in mind that the intentions of this game are for you to come back to it for an hour or two of spare time, play a little for that day, and then move on to something else. This isn't like Minecraft or Terraria, where constant attention is needed or something else bad may happen, nor is there any meaningful leveling up from progressing the story explicitly aside from gaining Isabelle, and then from there, modifying your island until you can gain the ability to terraform. Overall, it's decent, but not much to write home about. out. Its charm really peaks when you start fresh, but it can quickly become a nuisance if, God forbid, you have to restart. It's the longest tutorial period in the Animal Crossing series, and compared to other sandboxy, life simulation type games, takes quite a while to upgrade yourself. Literally, real life weeks to months if you don't have a guide to specifically direct you towards terraforming. Now, story aside, how does the gameplay hold up? If you're familiar with the Animal Crossing series, then all of the controls should be familiar. You walk with the left stick, can interact with objects with A, can hold the B button to run, Y lets you put items into your inventory, and X can open up your inventory, which can be upgraded as you play. The addition of triggers on the controller gave Nintendo more freedom to add more features, and the D-pad has some functionality too. Pressing up on the D-pad brings up your tool wheel, which allows you to quickly select the tools from your inventory. They don't have to be just tools. New Horizons introduces more holdable items to your inventory, such as coffee, ice cream, propellers, bubbles, glow sticks, and even wands. You don't have to use the tool wheel, it's actually something you have to buy. You can play the game perfectly fine by using left and right to swap between them, and down to put the item away. The right trigger now allows you to bring up your reactions menu. You can now make your character do the same goofy faces all the other characters have been doing for years, which can make for some funny screenshots if you ever wanted to make some kind of roleplay out of this. The right bumper allows you to bring up a keyboard, which can allow you to speak for the first time, which has some level of practical functionality, particularly in multiplayer. That's right, you can bring your homies to your island and even play couch co-op if you have real friends. I know it's preposterous, but it's there. Finally, the left trigger brings up your new Nook phone, which of course comes equipped with all the apps for keeping track of achievements, making designs, and so on and so forth. Now, speaking of the playable character, there's a bunch more customization we have in this game compared to before. Some of you may be surprised to learn that New Horizons is the first mainline game to feature the ability to change skin tone. Back in New Leaf, you had to wait until the summer to tan your character to the appropriate color temperature. They also give you way more hair and eye customization with the introduction of the mirror. You can also purchase more designs and customizables from the Nook Terminal. The Nook Terminal comes into play once Tom Nook informs you about the Nook Miles program, an app that basically tracks your achievements. At the start, it only really keeps track of large milestones, but they reward you relatively handsomely. Nook Miles are their own form of currency that are only usable in specific cases. Once you play enough and upgrade the Resident Services building, Tom Nook upgrades the app, and that's when the app starts tracking an infinite number of daily achievements, which can net you a smaller amount of miles. Miles can be used in the terminal to purchase a large variety of other useful items for decoration, as well as DIY recipes, bell vouchers in case you're running low on cold hard cash, and tickets to explore other islands for resources. New Horizons' big new thing is DIY recipes and DIY cooking. From the beginning, DIY was the focus of the game. It's how you'll craft your new items, tools, and furniture in the beginning of the game, and will be the second most important thing to use for general decoration. DIY crafting can get to be quite involved, requiring you to normalize and commit to a daily routine of obtaining natural resources and found items to craft some snazzy new digs for your house, as well as some of your amaze homes. Stones, seashells, weeds, tree branches, chopped wood of different hardnesses, and even seasonal exclusive items like acorns, snowflakes, and cherry blossom petals will all be used to make an absolute ton of furniture, wallpapers, and floorings. DIY cooking was actually an addition they made free in a late 2021 update, and is only obtainable, to my understanding, on the day of the United States Thanksgiving, otherwise known in-game as Turkey Day. On Turkey Day, you have to help Franklin, the world-class chef, prepare dishes for his feast, and then after that's done, enhance his food with special items, of which you can find a chart for online. Once the day concludes, you'll get access to all of the Turkey Day exclusive DIY recipes, as well as the ability to cook at kitchenette areas, which are a type of furniture. Cooked meals usually are placeable and straight up edible if you so desire. You would really only ever want to cook for decoration, but if you do eat, you can gain strength to uproot trees with one plunge of the shovel. Or, if you have a toilet, you can literally shit it out and flush the toilet. It's worth noting you can also do almost the same things with all fruits that grow on trees. Both of these DIY elements combined can really bring a level of personality to your island and can help further accentuate the store-bought items in your world, creating a more harmoniously aesthetic experience for your island. Similarly, your phone gives you access to the Fashion Designer app, which can let you decorate clothing to wear with a relatively robust pixel system that tries its best to blend elements together to make something cohesive on the final design. These are usually the core of Animal Crossing New Horizons' online community. You'll find so many accounts that can do some really clever clever shit with the colors and shapes that they can make in the designer app. You can start placing down street patterns and flower designs before you even get the ability to place the game's pre-made paths. So if you're looking for a sophisticated street with sidewalks, this is really going to be your best bet. The only real problem is that if you intend to decorate your entire island and then decide to make changes, there's no real way to get rid of these tiles en masse, so you've got to arduously tick up every single tile you place. Unfortunately, that doesn't change when you get real paths either, making island customization on that front incredibly slow, I'm afraid. While on the topic of your phone, the Nook phone gives you access to a plethora of other apps that do pretty much what they say they do. The map shows you the map, the camera is your way to take pictures, and they also added a mode which allows your character to hold the camera and walk around. Outside, you can really only see what's in front of you, and you are fixed to the same angle, but inside you have full 360-degree movement, which is really nice for making some postcard-like screenshots. The Critterpedia is basically a catalog of the insects, fish, and fossils you have collected. You do have to submit them all to Blathers for them to count towards your museum completion, though. There's even an app on here that allows you to teleport back home in case you get lost or soft-locked in an area you aren't supposed to be in. Consider it, but effectively useless in my experience. Other apps are easy to figure out and self-explanatory. Really, the phone and all the other inbuilt applications and options are tight and intuitive for the player. The game goes to great lengths to explain how all of that works, and really you should not have any trouble navigating the world. Something we do have to take into account, though, are the NPCs. I didn't go into enough detail about these guys when talking about Tears of the Kingdom, but that's because I thought they served their purpose well, and were so well made that I didn't need to sit and explain how good they were. And with this game, I do have some good things to say here, but this is where the critiques start. These guys wandering around aimlessly are your islanders, who you're going to share your many years with on this island. And I'm sad to say, these guys may be the reason why your multi-year-long playthrough might shorten into a multi-month-long playthrough. Let me start with the good stuff. I already talked about some of the lore coming down to the key characters of interest, like the Able Sisters and Blathers, and that remains true, but even amongst the other islanders, they have a reasonable amount of charm too. Your main characters will always be consistent, like Timmy and Tommy Nook, who are the operators and owners of Nook's Cranny, and basically handle any business related to the store, and the Able Sisters, who are the tailors, and they supply you with daily clothing options, as well as a fitting room designed for checking out everything in season for the day. They also have their own terminal, which you can use to look up specific designs other players have published for online use. If you play long enough, you can also eventually get Cap'n, who can motorboat you to islands the Dodo brothers can't take you to. Only difference is that Cap'n charges you miles for each trip. These are some of your main characters who will never leave once they announce their permanent arrival. The only other characters that are semi-permanent, and by that I mean are permanent but exist elsewhere, are Lottie and Harvey. I already talked about Lottie, but Harvey comes by and announces the Photopia relatively early into your adventure. After you play the game long enough, he does open up the rest of his island to you, which is where a bunch more services become available, either by Harvey's permanent residents or by traveling merchants. Speaking of which, merchants are your revolving main characters, which include Kix, who supplies mainly shoes, socks, and sometimes bags and other accessories; Sahara, your rug dealer, who can give you wallpapers and floorings that Nook's Cranny won't have; Label, who is looking for some fresh new styles and will ask you to wear specific themes of clothing and reward you with her own special brand of clothing through the mail; Jolly Red, formerly known as Crazy Red, who is your art dealer, which can be submitted to the museum, just watch out for counterfeits, and so on and so forth. See, the other islanders are separated into classes, and when you look into it, things start to make sense. Each class will have their own kind of dialogue to suit their personalities. To give an example, jocks are regarded as simple, requiring only the bare essentials of a home, with an emphasis on weightlifting over style and feng shui. Their contrast are the snooty islanders, who value money and vanity over muscles. Sometimes these characters interact with each other, which can make for interesting conversations, but can sometimes affect their liking of the island. If things are low and they feel dejected or neglected, they'll want to leave, so this can be important for the player to understand when they notice a particular islander asking about leaving constantly. It's your job to fill the void, give gifts, and interact more frequently before they decide to ask you to leave. Not that it matters. Some of you may remember islanders leaving on their own accord without notifying the player in older Animal Crossing games, but this time they always take the time to ask you first, just to give you a chance to raise their levels or decide for them if they should leave. And if they do leave, that's it. You'll never hear from them again. No parting gifts or letters in the mail like in New Leaf, no phone calls, nothing. If you thought you were being nice, letting an islander go off and do their own thing, I can almost guarantee you that that's the last time you'll see them. Would have been cool to see them move back in and say how much they missed living here, but to my knowledge, that doesn't exist. There are a couple things to keep in mind regarding Islander happiness. Firstly, there are 8 categories, 4 designated for the male villagers and 4 designated for the female villagers. These 8 personality types have synergies and clashes with other personality types, and that can make for some fun and interesting small talk, especially if you catch a conversation mid-stride. Secondly, there's another smaller trait that only minorly contributes to conversations, the species of the Islander, which is just the type of animal they are. When you take everything as is, this actually holds all the blueprints for a simple yet surprisingly multiplicative system that can build from character interactions and form a large amount of dialogue options, and can even include larger or longer discussions. Well, you see, Nintendo didn't want to actually give us that. In fact, as impressive as this whole system sounds, it takes you all of 2 months to hear everything you need to hear. Everybody has come down with amnesia and can't remember that they've already said the same thing last week. That may be a little bit facetious, but that's the big asterisk about this game. This life sim, so tastefully built on person to NPC interactions, gets bogged down all the time by the same 3-sentence conversations over and over again. Interactions, after a decent amount of time, become monotonous, unskippable cutscenes, and while some are harmless one-liners, others can keep you longer than Blathers. But at least Blathers has interesting things to say about each thing you bring in. These guys will talk about the same topics, and because they are grouped into these categories, they will all talk about the exact same things. Which means if you have 2 of the same kind of Islander on your island, which is very easy to happen, you could exhaust the amount of unique dialogue options twice as fast. Their reactions are the same, their houses look similar, their interests are the same. They don't even have a specific gift you can give to each of them that unlocks a special dialogue option. If I give Olivia, a snooty Islander, an expensive ring, her response won't be any different from Anka's. Or if the weather is great outside, all of your jocks suddenly say they want to run around the whole island. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what will yank you out of the experience within just a few months to years of playtime. I say this and emphasize this because if you fail to transfer your save data from your Nintendo Switch 1 to your Switch 2, you'll have to start all over again and hear the same bits of dialogue you already heard in your last playthrough. In other scripted games, that makes sense, but in a relatively expansive life sim, that's the last thing you want to hear from the randomly generated characters. And before you ask, yes, holidays and seasons do affect some of the dialogue options. Even for the more important characters, like the Able sisters, they'll start referring to the weather outside. Isabelle and Tom Nook change their outfits for the seasons. Timmy and Tommy Nook start getting tired during their final hours of business. But for everyone else, when they are woken up from their naps, you'll see the same pieces of dialogue. When they have something to say and run up to you, you'll see the same pieces of dialogue. When they ask to come inside your house, you'll get the same pieces of dialogue. Of course, you won't see this in your first few weeks. Hell, you might not even in your first few seasons. But after some time, and especially if you play this game long term, every day like the game intends for you to, the cracks will start to show. So much to a point where you might even start actively avoiding Islander interactions altogether. While true, some can be charming and sometimes refreshing, like when someone asks you if you want to play hide and seek with them, sometimes they can be real time wasters, like the repeated instance of Islanders wanting to make even with someone they had a disagreement or argument with earlier by asking you to deliver a present for them now because they're too lazy to do it themselves. What? These kinds of interactions exist to give you something to do, nothing more, nothing less. And it's glaringly apparent. Some Islanders get sick. Well, if you don't bring them medicine, doesn't matter, they're fine the next day. But what about their opinion of you? What about it? When they want to leave, they'll just let you know, and you can just deny them free will. Too much control is in the player's hands, I feel. Consequences don't exist unless you repeatedly hit Islanders with your bug net, which is overly mean in my eyes. I really think the game could have thrived on interactions between Islanders. I wish you could walk in on Islanders actually having a talk about their behavior and remedying things with thoughtful gifts outside of your discretion. That way, sometimes you could go over to Islanders' houses and they'd have a new piece of clothing on or a new small furniture item. This kind of stuff would add some depth to the characters and their interactions. Islanders also wander alone. I'd like to see some consequences of synergizing or clashing personality types, like characters walking together or actively avoiding one another with a disgusted or angry face. In New Leaf, they used to have legitimate arguments, but not anymore. Sometimes some characters will participate in the same activity together, or you'll get the very occasional hand wave, but there's a lot of times where it's almost like islanders don't even know or care that others are there. Ordinarily, I wouldn't care, but because the entire name of the game is having meaningful interactions like this, Animal Crossing New Horizons really falls flat in that area. And I'm only giving it so much shit because Nintendo really did get NPC interactions right in other games, including previous Animal Crossing games. There are unique occurrences, but are they unique enough to last multiple years? My answer, unless you're really hopping on for a tidbit at a time a few times a week, no, they're not. And intentionally letting your islanders go to be replaced with another one is only giving you a new coat of paint, not a whole new character interaction. If you're playing this game for multiple hours every day, like we were back in lockdown, then you will feel it. But if you've actively, got a life and can exist outside of Animal Crossing, then these issues I have aren't nearly as glaringly obvious. I have to give them props for actually speaking to the player rather than just using gibberish to represent speaking. But there are still some Sims that can do better, and a lot of times it's because each character, though less of them, is entirely different, and those differences and interactions can lead to more varied outcomes. I think Animal Crossing's islanders could benefit from interactions between one another and not relying solely on the player's input. Okay, let's move on to a completely different aspect. Decoration is the next primary objective of Animal Crossing New Horizons. Compared to New Leaf and even Happy Home Designer, especially with the Island Paradise DLC, there are an abundance of collectibles that can make your island really feel like home. Nook's Cranny is going to be your main at-home resource, but once you get far enough in the Island Paradise DLC, you can eventually get a catalog and order up to 5 items from there per day. You can also order items from the Nook Terminal, including items that can only be purchased with miles, as well as some seasonal items. Or Nintendo's heartfelt thank you in the form of Super Mario-themed items and cosmetics. Items range from large-scale furnitures like couches, dining tables, and fruit stands to even volcanoes, cars, trucks, and street lamps, all the way down to cell phones, diamond rings, milk cartons, and just about everything in between. Each season also brings its flair of items, especially around certain holidays. In the spring, the cherry blossoms bloom, and you can catch cherry blossom petals and use them to craft items from the blossom set, including wallpapers, floorings, carpet rugs, and some other miscellaneous furniture. Same goes for Thanksgiving. That amount of items almost doubles for Christmas and the winter season as a whole. A fantastic new addition and the main draw of Animal Crossing New Horizons is the ability to decorate outside. That has infamously been not possible in the last Animal Crossing games. Before, you needed to enact specific public works projects to place down fountains and gazebos. Not anymore. Now all you need are the right materials and you can place things pretty much wherever you want. And no, the items don't need to be themed for outside purposes. You can put a car inside your house just as you can put a couch and TV outside. They really took off almost all the inhibitors for this. Back inside, you can get specific decorations for the inside of homes, including carpets, wall decor, and ceiling decor. These are the only caveats to decorating outside, and yes, I also think not being able to place down carpets outside is a missed opportunity. I also think the game would benefit from being able to place hanging street lamps from the side of walls. It would make certain kinds of decorating feel just that little bit more fleshed out and sophisticated. It's not a huge issue, just a missed opportunity for certain aesthetics. Terraforming can help with decoration, and I don't just mean with the app you get at the end of the game. Tom Nook actually gives you the ability to place bridges and make inclines to higher elevations once you upgrade the resident services building. Only caveat is that you're financially responsible for these, and he charges a pretty f***ing penny for it too. These are your main access points for other parts of the island. You do get tools for traversal early in the game, but bridges and inclines are meant to make that seamless. Beyond those, gaining the ability to add elevation to your liking and rivers can make your island feel so much more unique. It's not uncommon to search the community and find heart-shaped ponds and roads structured like highways or suburban towns. These, especially combined with some of those customizable paths I mentioned earlier, can really make your island shine. This leads me to some of my complaints. You will feel like there is missed potential here. You can terraform up to 4 levels, and on the 4th level you cannot place items. Elevation levels are at a set height, and I will get into why that's frustrating from a purely aesthetic standpoint in just a minute. Rivers and waterways are just water. You can't put any customable elements in or on the water. No lily pads, no boats, nothing. Bridges can only be so long, which means rivers can only be so wide, and there's not a whole lot of leeway. Bridges can also only be placed over water. You can't make canyons or passages. Cliff sides aren't customizable at all. You can't change the color of the dirt or rock, you can't place anything on them, you can't even chisel them, much more than rounding them off. The reason I mention all of this is because you can go into the insect section of the museum and see so much detail, so many points of interest, so much potential that this game just doesn't give you. We can see half elevations, half inclines, areas that can add some level of depth into the space. The waterways are so clear. I get why they're pretty much opaque in real gameplay, but even having the ability to decorate them with weeds and lily pads would add so much to the game. And I say this not just as a designer, but as a player. When you give the player more options, they will experiment sooner or later. Of course, the current system isn't necessarily problematic, but it leaves a lot to be desired, especially when it shows you what it can do. It would keep more players engaged, alongside more interactions with islanders. I could have complained about how the catalog of items isn't anywhere near as expansive or detailed as Animal Crossing Pocket Camp, the mobile phone game, but that's not even as important as the terraforming limitations. But while I'm on it, yeah, Pocket Camp gives you more stuff for technically less money, and the game released before New Horizons. Some of you guys will remember Animal Crossing New Leaf having kits, which were entire compilations of furniture and clothing that worked together harmoniously. They don't really exist anymore. They have sets, which are like kits, but they aren't packaged as a bundle. You either have to buy one at a time or DIY make them one at a time, which actually makes them more expensive. Reference islanders like Inkwell, Viche, and Cece for Splatoon can only appear in Brewster's Cafe in the museum, and unfortunately don't give you any themed furniture like they used to. I will give them props where it's due. Most items are customizable with their color, and if you personally can't customize these items at your own DIY station, you can go to Harv's Island once it's upgraded and talk to Cyrus and Reese, and they will be able to give you as much customization as possible. You just gotta pay for it. After a while, this gets annoying. You kinda have to gather all the items you want to have customized, and then sometimes make several trips to Harv's Island to ensure you're getting the best customization options possible. They did add Tortimer to Harv's Island to make getting items from your inventory seamless, but you have to have the money to unlock him first, which takes time. In that respect, this game's MO is to start you with a semi-problem and then remove said semi-problem with an upgrade, rather than starting you with a lot and then progressively giving you more. Don't get me wrong though, some elements are straight up progressive. The Island Paradise DLC as a whole, the museum, and even small things such as your inventory are just a few examples. But my biggest complaint about this game is randomness. New items are so difficult to come by. Animal Crossing has this balloon system, which will carry balloons of different colors indicating the kind of present that you will receive when you pop it, and you can pop them with slingshots. Sometimes they'll give you money, or new materials, or even new items and DIY recipes, but sometimes they give you stuff you already have or things you don't need or want. It wouldn't be as big of an issue if Nook's Cranny didn't only have 5 items per day. The Nook Terminal in the Resident Services building doesn't really ever have anything vastly new, so your only option is buying the DLC and then working to increase your catalog with items Nook's Cranny may not have. But even that takes time, and they can't even give you DIY recipes for things you would otherwise love to have. Plus, for that luxury, you gotta drop real-world money, because the DLC is an extra $20. DIY recipes are also difficult to come by. Either your player gets some random inspiration, they very occasionally fall from balloons, you can find 1 on the beach per day, or 1 islander has one. They really love stretching out when you can obtain some of these things. It's worse when you get DIY recipes, but then the recipes require season-specific items like pumpkins or flowers that can only grow or are given to you at certain times in the year. Customizing, the biggest thing about this game, becomes a forced slog that cannot be fixed no matter how many bells you have sitting in your wallet. I shit you not, when winter started, I spent 10+ hours sitting outside waiting every 5 minutes for a balloon to spawn with seasonal DIY recipes. Not only did I not get any recipes from the balloons I popped, but I also figured out that the game actually doesn't guarantee a balloon every 5 minutes. It makes a coin toss every 4th minute to decide if it should send out a balloon at all on the 5th minute. Which means sometimes I sprinted up and down the island beach side looking for balloons, thinking I somehow messed up the timing. Obtaining items for decorating, one of the main reasons to play the game, is confined by limited choice and randomness, 2 aspects that can really bore me to death about the game. But the consequence is that you develop what I like to call Nook-home syndrome, where no matter how much the game's item selection f***s you, you still try to join every day just before sunset, just to inevitably be disappointed again and stand by the edge of your island waiting hours and hours on end checking back in every 5 minutes after praying to the Nintendo gods to just drop a damn DIY recipe. Shaking trees and running into people's houses can only go so far before it gets to be annoying. That said, really there aren't a lot of cons in this game. It's just that the cons are things that would objectively make the game feel more worth it as a whole. Yes, seasonal items are great, but then compare the amount and quality of items to the phone game that released before the mainline console game, and you start to realize this game was neutered from the start. Yes, it has more items and customizables from the last game, but good luck actually ever seeing half of those items because the store's selection is random and limited. Yes, swimming and diving is a huge addition to the game, but then again, you can't even put boats or beach balls in the water, and all the other islanders are hydrophobic, save for one otter hippie getting high off clams. Yes, giving us the ability to decorate outside is a huge upgrade compared to paying for public works projects that were really limited. But then again, it's not really full customization, you can only affect the ground. Yes, islanders can make your experience really enriching, but they also share too many personality traits to differentiate them and make them fun in the long run. Yes, this game looks amazing, but compared to what Mario Kart 8 made it look like, there's really no excuse. In all honesty, looking back at it, a lot of Animal Crossing New Horizons' success was thanks to the lockdown. Some of you are too young to remember this, but the global pandemic COVID-19 had everyone locked inside for months at a time. People that ordinarily were going to work were now seeing a lot more free time, and since the Switch is a casual gamer's dream console, and Animal Crossing is a slice of life simulator where you can actually go outside and, do things, it makes complete and total sense why this game's sales skyrocketed. I remember I was part of it too. I actually contracted it and had it from February through to March. This was basically an early summer break present to myself, and since I had nothing better to do aside from Splatoon 2 and Overwatch, this was a daily ritual for the majority of the rest of the year. I prioritized so much of my time to this one game, going out of my way to even collect unnecessary things and redecorate every season. And in retrospect, that was the killer. You can't get too involved with this game. Before I accidentally hoed myself from transferring all my save data to my new snazzy Splatoon Switch OLED, I knew every detail about my islanders. And if that's how you're going to play this game, you will get tired of it after 2 years. Hell, maybe even less. But at the same time, I can't describe to you how immensely satisfying it is to come back day after day, plant money trees, buy items that you need, and finish projects that you started. This game's not bad, it's just that it can wear its welcome a little bit. Just exercise moderation when playing this game, and ultimately you shouldn't see the same problems that I do. Alright. On to the ratings. Let's review. It's an easy time with some fun things to do. Sometimes that gets overlooked, but being a sim game, that's incredibly important. For the optimal amount of time spent on this game, you actually can get to see a decent range in personality. Aside from inevitably running into repeated dialogue, you can actually see that Nintendo did develop a lot of different things for the islanders to say. Control is tight and satisfying, although sometimes the game's tile system for placing and moving items can be slightly annoying. The island size is quite a bit larger from the last mainline game, making for more space to customize and get immersed in. There are a lot of new items to buy and use, making your island and home feel really lived in. That said, Nook's Cranny does have a limited selection, and Pocket Camp, though officially out of service now, did have more items and more unique items still missing from this game, and the comparison is obvious. Earning bells isn't difficult considering you can sell almost everything you can obtain, and the turnaround value is pretty forgiving. There are various ways to make money outside of selling, such as planting money trees and working. Of course, you get the full experience and opportunity to if you purchase the DLC. The mainstay characters are all useful and charming, giving you reason to return, if nothing else, just to hear what they have to say. Your islanders are charming and useful as well, but they do lose some of their unique veil if you're around them for too long. Real-world time makes the game actually interesting, especially when seasons and holidays can completely freshen up the vibe of your island. DIY recipes are genuinely one of the most inventive things to add to a sim game like this, as they add so much more customization and complexity to the world, making your island feel like home. Of course, you do have to make time to really hunt for the new DIY recipes, as sometimes it can be a bit annoying hunting for them and being unsuccessful. Decorating is more fleshed out, using a quite intuitive tile and half-tile system for placing furniture. That said, because they are tiles, sometimes silhouettes can be a little misleading, generally trending to larger than they look, Also, I think it's time to move on from only being able to place items in one of 4 cardinal directions. Diagonals are something I look forward to in the future. And on top of that, placed designs on the ground outside, including pathways, have to be removed one by one. So if you decorate your entire island and then decide to redecorate, there is no fast option for en-masse redecoration. Item detail is impressive, making the items feel like they are affected by the world. Plants and cloth will blow in the wind, or if they are placed next to fans or air conditioning units. I think the next entry should move away from the tile system. That's just my personal opinion, because while tiles are nice and easy, they do leave less room for customization and really making areas feel lived in. It's a small thing, but sometimes item spacing with the tile system leaves strange gaps between items. The music is charming and relaxing, which is a huge deal if you're going to be spending hours in this game. The ability to terraform the island almost to your liking is an extremely good makeover coming from the last mainline game. The Island Paradise DLC is well worth the price, as it gives you access to a plethora of different items, in addition to being a great way to introduce the player to more advanced decorating techniques. I think this formula could benefit from limiting your budget so you can think more creatively about decoration, and allowing the clients to be so easily pleased makes for an insanely easy way to make money, which, if that's all you care about, I guess isn't terrible in the grand scheme of things. The game gives you an abundance of ways to make your character feel like they represent your style, and the NPCs will always refer to you in a neutral way. The sheer amount of clothes is enough to warrant frequent outfit changes depending on how you're feeling. That said, interaction with items is limited. Really, your character can only sit down on chairs and benches and lay down on beds. They can't play in the sand or ride park rides. Vending machines are just for show. Beach balls and soccer balls only bounce in one place. And bikes, skateboards, scooters, and cars can't even be driven. The Nook phone is an intelligent way to check on achievements, check recipes, and generally keep track of what you're doing, as well as allowing you some creative freedoms with the camera and clothing, canvas, and floor tile designs. Of course, some things like the camera I would love to see improved upon, at least inside spaces that aren't your home, to give more opportunities for 360-degree movement. The player is responsible for almost everything that happens on the island, which means there's no worry of things randomly changing without the player's input. But this means you are entirely financially responsible for all public works projects, all housing upgrades, and all items that get placed in the world, as well as morally responsible for holding your islanders hostage if they even mention the idea of moving, even if they don't like living there. The game gives you multiple months worth of things to do, and though some days or weeks may be stale, some days or weeks will be packed with activities or new things to use to decorate. Although, after generally a couple years, you do feel as though you've seen everything there is to see, and they haven't updated this game since the release of Splatoon 3, simply because both series share many developers. Multiplayer is a feature that allows other players to come to your island and help you with decorating or even trading items and ideas. Even if you don't want that, you can share your island layouts and designs in the Dream World, where you can immortalize island designs for online play. Otherwise, there aren't many deviations in gameplay, which is great for consistency, but that does mean minigame areas like Tortimer's Island and the club where you could party with everyone are very missed for some fun and fresh minigames. I'm starting off by giving this game the objective rating of A. There's not a lot of story, so there's not much to sink your teeth into, but the things you'll find yourself doing to keep entertained is more than enough for at least an entire year. The main story functions a lot like a side quest, which is actually perfect for a life sim collectathon style game. But players who are looking for something to beat or for credits to roll will find next to no interest in this game whatsoever. And while the amount of items and interactions is engaging for that year, after that, you'll feel a little hollow, wishing that there was more to customize or change that the game just doesn't allow you to do. And it can be disappointing finding out you've reached the end of what you can decorate. And to cap it off, I personally think that this deserves the spot in fun for a while. The game provides adequate enough items and supplies to keep you entertained, especially around seasonal hotspots like the spring cherry blossoms, the middle of the summer, Halloween, Thanksgiving, and the winter season, but in between can lead you to feel like there's no real need to play the game. Plus, with some of the requirements for some of these DIY projects, as well as the randomness factor, sometimes it could bring a sense of lack of control that can be mildly frustrating for players looking to complete one or two items by the time the seasonal fun stuff is over. Players can only shoot down so many balloons and talk to so many islanders over and over again before the game eventually runs its course and it's time to set it down for half a year. Plus, the lack of any real penalties while you're gone and the ability to time travel through major events you've missed via the Switch's settings really make it so stepping away, even for a prolonged time, is only a minor inconvenience in the grand scheme. Overall, Animal Crossing New Horizons sits high and generally favorable on my tier list. And with that said, that concludes my ratings. Did you agree with them or did you hate them? That's what the comments are for. Appreciate you stopping by, and I'll see y'all for the next review. And with that, I'm gone.